A broke single mom working the night shift slides coffee to a man with tears in his eyes. By morning, a new car shows up. For the boy. Sweet, right? Until a bullet rips through her window and the crying stranger kicks in the door, armed, cold, in charge. He's not broken. He's the ruthless mafia boss. He moves her and her son into a fortress. He cooks breakfast with the same hands that break men. The heat between them is real, but so is the danger. A rival wants payback. An ex shows up with secrets, and somewhere close, a traitor is feeding their names to the enemy. When her child is taken, the clock starts. The boss will burn the city to get the boy back, but mercy could kill them and violence could cost her heart. What happens when the only safe place is with the most dangerous man alive, and the price of love is everything? The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as Mara Quinn dragged the damp cloth across the last booth's surface. Her movements mechanical after 8 hours on her feet. The night shift at Joey's diner always felt endless, but at least the rain kept most customers away. Most, except for the man who'd claimed the corner booth 2 hours ago. She stole another glance at him. Everything about him screamed money and power, from his tailored black coat to the heavy watch on his wrist, yet his hands trembled around the untouched coffee cup. His jaw was clenched tight enough to crack teeth, and those red-rimmed eyes stared through the window like he was seeing ghosts in the rain. The clock ticked past midnight. 2 drunk regulars at the counter grew louder, their laughter sharp and grating. "Hey, sweetheart, how about some service over here?" One of them slapped his empty mug on the counter, coffee dregs splattering. Mara's shoulders tensed, but she kept her voice steady. "Just a minute, gentlemen." 8 years of waitressing had taught her how to handle difficult customers. Still, exhaustion made her movements clumsy as she grabbed the coffee pot. The stranger in the corner hadn't moved, hadn't touched his coffee. Something in his stillness made her chest tight with an emotion she couldn't name. Before she could think better of it, she cut a slice of apple pie and carried it with a fresh cup of coffee to his table. "On the house," she said softly, sliding them in front of him. "You look like you could use something sweet tonight." His eyes snapped to her face, steel gray and sharp enough to cut. For a moment, the raw pain in them stole her breath. "Yo, princess!" the drunk's voice carried across the diner. "We're paying customers here, unlike some people." The stranger's hand tightened on his cup. Something dangerous flickered across his face. "Show us some appreciation for those tips we leave." The second drunk chimed in, both men dissolving into crude laughter. "That's enough." The stranger's voice was quiet but carried like thunder. His accent was slight but distinct, Eastern European maybe. He didn't raise his voice or even turn around, but the effect was immediate. The drunk's laughter died as if someone had flipped a switch. Mara watched in amazement as both men scrambled to throw cash on the counter and stumble out into the rain, the bell above the door chiming their hasty exit. "Thank you," she said, though it felt inadequate. "You didn't have to." It was nothing. His voice was softer now, but still held that edge of authority. He stood in one fluid motion, laying something black on the table beneath his untouched plate. "Thank you for the kindness, Ms. Quinn." Before she could respond, he was gone, the bell chiming his departure. Rain swept in through the briefly open door, carrying the scent of wet pavement and something expensive. His cologne, maybe. Mara approached the table, heart beating a little faster as she picked up the black card he'd left behind. Heavy cardstock, minimal text in silver letters. Kazimir Volkov. The name hit her like a physical thing. She'd heard whispers of it before, in fragments of overheard conversations between certain late-night customers. The kind who paid in cash and spoke in hushed tones. The kind normal people pretended not to notice. Her hands trembled slightly as she slipped the card into her apron pocket. The rest of closing passed in a blur, wiping tables, counting the register, mopping floors that would just get dirty again tomorrow. All while her fingers kept brushing against that card, as if making sure it was real. Finally, she stood in the fluorescent-lit doorway, keys in hand. The rain had settled into a gentle mist that made halos around the streetlights. Her apartment was only 6 blocks away, but tonight the familiar walk felt different. She pulled out the card one last time, studying it under the harsh light. Kazimir Volkov. Just another customer, she told herself firmly. The night was over, and tomorrow would be normal again. She had a 6-year-old who needed breakfast before school, bills to pay, a life carefully balanced on the edge of getting by. She couldn't afford to let her imagination run wild over a strange man and his expensive card. Still, as she locked the diner's door and pulled her worn jacket tighter against the mist, she couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. like the world had tilted slightly on its axis and everything familiar was now a degree off center. The card went back into her pocket and her keys found their way into her hand, positioned between her knuckles like her mother had taught her years ago. The street was empty, but the shadows between the streetlights seemed deeper than usual. Her sensible shoes made quiet sounds against the wet sidewalk as she started her walk home. 6 blocks, just like every other night. She'd passed the closed laundromat, the 24-hour convenience store, where Mr. Chen always waved, the park where she took Noah on good days. Everything would be exactly where she'd left it. The name in her pocket felt like a stone, heavy with meaning she didn't want to understand. Kazimir Volkov. A door she shouldn't open, a path she shouldn't consider. She had responsibilities, a life carved out of determination and necessity. No room for mysteries or dangerous men with storm gray eyes. Tomorrow, she decided, she would throw the card away. Tomorrow, everything would be normal again. But for now, in the quiet hours between midnight and dawn, she let herself wonder about red-rimmed eyes and hands that shook around coffee cups, about voices that could stop trouble with 3 quiet words, about the weight of names that carried power she couldn't comprehend. Morning light filtered through the worn curtains of Mara's small apartment as she hurried Noah through his breakfast routine. Her fingers drummed against the kitchen counter while she mentally tallied numbers. Electric bill, groceries, the repairs her ancient Corolla desperately needed. "Mom, can I have more cereal?" Noah asked, milk dripping from his spoon. "Sorry, baby. We need to save it for tomorrow." She ruffled his dark hair, heart squeezing at his quiet acceptance. "Ready for school?" The walk to Noah's elementary school was their special time. He chattered about his art project while she held his small hand, memorizing these precious moments before another double shift. "Remember, Mrs. Chen is picking you up today," Mara reminded him at the school gates. "Be good." "I know, Mom." Noah hugged her tight, then darted off to join his friends. The mental math resumed as she walked home. Maybe she could pick up extra weekend shifts to cover the brake repairs. The mechanic's estimate felt like a physical weight in her pocket. She rounded the corner to her building and stopped dead. A black Mercedes SUV gleamed at the curb, its pristine surface reflecting the morning sun. A man in a crisp uniform stood beside it, holding a manila envelope. "Ms. Quinn." He stepped forward. "The paperwork's all complete. Just need your signature." There must be a mistake. But her eyes caught on the detail tag hanging from the rearview mirror. Volkov Holdings. "No mistake, ma'am, including the installed car seat and full coverage insurance." He opened the rear door, revealing a top-of-the-line child seat. "I can't accept this." The words felt hollow as she stared at the safety features that would protect Noah better than her deteriorating Corolla ever could. "Keys are in the envelope, along with the registration and insurance cards." He placed it in her numb hands. "Have a good day, Ms. Quinn." He was gone before she could protest further, leaving her alone with a vehicle worth more than she made in years. Pride warred with practicality as she thought of her son, of brake lines that could fail at any moment. The diner felt different that day. Every chime of the door had her head snapping up, expecting to see broad shoulders and storm-gray eyes. The black card burned in her apron pocket, where she'd transferred it that morning, unable to throw it away as planned. Hours crawled by. The lunch rush came and went. Her coworker Jenny commented on her jumpiness, but Mara brushed it off. By evening, her nerves were frayed from the constant anticipation. Then, just after the dinner crowd thinned, he was there. Kazimir Volkov sat in the corner booth like he'd materialized from the shadows. His dark suit immaculate, his presence commanding even in stillness. The raw grief she'd glimpsed last night was carefully masked, but she could still see echoes of it around his eyes. "Ms. Quinn." His accent wrapped around her name like silk over steel. "A moment of your time?" She approached his table, coffee pot in hand, like a shield. "I can't accept the car." "Your current vehicle is unsafe." He stated it as fact, not accusation. "Do you feel secure here, at work, at home?" "Excuse me?" "The locks on your building's back entrance are inadequate. The alley behind the diner is poorly lit." His eyes tracked every movement in the restaurant. "These are security concerns." "I don't need a bodyguard, Mr. Volkov." She kept her voice steady despite the flutter in her chest. "Or charity." "This isn't charity." Something flickered in his expression. "It's necessary precaution." The trash needed taking out. It was an excuse to escape his intensity, but she took it, pushing through the back door into the alley's darkness. "Mara?" The voice came from the shadows, oily and intimate. A figure in a gray cap stepped forward. "Pretty Mara." She spun back toward the door, heart hammering. It opened before she reached it, and Casimir moved past her like liquid darkness. His broad frame blocked her view, but she heard it. A single warning grunt, followed by retreating footsteps splashing through puddles. Mara pressed her back against the cold steel door, breathing hard. Rain began to fall again, gentle at first, then picking up intensity, but she couldn't move. The alley that had been merely dark now felt menacing, filled with possibilities she'd tried so hard to ignore. Casimir's presence radiated heat even with space between them. He didn't speak, didn't move to touch her, just stood guard while her racing heart slowly steadied. Water darkened his suit shoulders, but he seemed unconcerned with the rain or the rough surroundings. He belonged here somehow, in this space between safety and danger, like a bridge between her careful world and something far more complicated. The back door's hinges creaked in the wind. Distant traffic created a constant backdrop of white noise. These familiar sounds anchored her, helped her breathe through the realization that her carefully constructed normality might be more fragile than she'd thought. The man in the gray cap had said her name like he'd been watching, waiting, knowing. And Casimir had known he would be there. The alley door hadn't fully closed behind her when two shadows detached from the darkness. Mara's heart jumped into her throat as they materialized. One tall and lean, the other shorter, but broader, both wearing dark clothes that melted into the night. "Quinn's girl," the taller one said, voice slick with false warmth. "Your mama left some unfinished business." Mara's fingers tightened around her phone. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you do." The broader man shifted, blocking her path to the street. "Your mother borrowed money from people who don't forget. Interest adds up." Rain dripped from the fire escape above, each drop echoing in the narrow space. The diner's backlight flickered, casting unstable shadows that made everything feel surreal. "I haven't seen my mother in years." Mara tried to keep her voice steady. "Whatever she owes passes to you." The tall one moved closer. "Phone, now. We'll need those numbers." His hand shot out, snatching at her cell. Mara jerked back, but the brick wall met her spine. The shorter man chuckled, a sound like gravel underfoot. Then everything shifted. Casimir appeared between them like a shadow turning solid. He said nothing. No threats, no warnings. His silence felt more dangerous than any words could have been. The tall one swung first. Casimir moved with fluid precision, catching the man's wrist and twisting. Bone cracked. A howl cut short as Casimir drove his other fist into the man's solar plexus. The shorter one rushed forward. Casimir pivoted, grabbed him by the throat, and slammed his head against the brick wall. The wet impact sound made Mara flinch. Both men crumpled to the ground, moaning. Mara's hands trembled. She hadn't even seen Casimir draw back his fist, just the devastating results of each movement. He stood between her and the fallen men, his back straight, suit barely wrinkled despite the violence. "Marcus." Casimir's voice carried quietly into the shadows. A black SUV appeared at the alley's entrance, headlights cutting through the rain. "Take Miss Quinn and Noah home. Post a watch." "I don't understand," Mara said, hating how her voice shook. "Why are they—" "Your mother's debt is being used as leverage." Casimir turned to face her, his expression controlled but his eyes blazing. A rival testing boundaries, seeing how much he can touch and still keep his hand. The clinical way he described potential violence should have terrified her. Instead, she felt an unsettling calm. This man didn't need police or traditional authority. He operated in a world where problems disappeared quietly into rain-soaked alleys. "It won't happen again," Mara said firmly, squaring her shoulders. "I can handle. You don't have to." His accent thickened slightly, emotion bleeding through his usual control. "The car is waiting." She wanted to argue, to insist she could manage on her own like she always had. But Noah's face flashed in her mind. Peaceful, innocent, deserving better than his mother's stubborn pride. The ride home was silent. Marcus, the driver, kept checking mirrors, while Mara stared out the window, trying to process how her life had shifted so dramatically in 2 days. The SUV's interior smelled of leather and something woodsy, expensive. Every surface gleamed with the kind of maintenance her old car hadn't seen in years. They pulled up to her building. Marcus insisted on checking the hallway before letting her exit the vehicle. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as she climbed the stairs to her third-floor apartment. Feet heavy with exhaustion. She stopped short at her door. Tucked into the frame was a playing card, an 8 of spades. The edges were crisp, new like it had just been placed there. Mara's fingers shook as she plucked it free, turning it over as if it might reveal its meaning. Inside, she threw all 3 deadbolts and checked the windows twice. The apartment felt smaller somehow. less secure despite being unchanged. The sound of Noah's steady breathing drew her to his room. He lay sprawled across his twin bed, one arm flung wide, the other curled protectively around his latest paper airplane creation. Moonlight filtered through the cheap curtains, painting silver streaks across his dark hair. So peaceful, so unaware of the danger circling their little world. Mara leaned against the doorframe, watching his chest rise and fall. She'd spent 7 years keeping him safe, working double shifts, stretching every dollar, making sure he never felt the weight of their circumstances. Now strangers were appearing with old debts and cryptic playing cards, while a dangerous man who could break bones without hesitation appointed himself their protector. "Keep your head down," she told herself. "Stay quiet, stay small, and this will pass like every other storm." The mantra had worked before, through her mother's disappearance, through pregnancy at 19, through endless months of scraping by on tips and determination. But as she slid down to sit in Noah's doorway, knees pulled to her chest, she couldn't shake the feeling that this storm was different. The 8 of spades sat on the coffee table where she'd dropped it, a simple piece of cardstock that somehow felt heavier than the stack of bills beside it. Rain tapped against the windows, a gentle percussion accompanying Noah's soft snores. A car alarm wailed in the distance, then fell silent. Somewhere below, she knew Marcus was watching, following Casimir's orders to keep them safe. She should have been more frightened by the violence she'd witnessed, should have run from the kind of man who could dispatch threats so efficiently. Instead, she found herself remembering the gentle way Casimir had spoken Noah's name, how carefully he'd considered the car seat installation, the precise control he'd shown even while defending her. The paper airplane on Noah's chest twitched with each breath, its crisp folds catching moonlight. Such a fragile thing, really. Paper and air and childhood dreams. Yet it held its shape, refused to crumple under the weight of reality. The setting sun painted long shadows across Mara's small apartment as she stood at the kitchen counter, helping Noah with his multiplication tables, while pasta bubbled on the stove. 7 times 8, she prompted, stirring the sauce. 56! Noah beamed, proud of remembering without counting on his fingers. That's my smart boy. Mara ruffled his hair, reaching for plates. Just 3 more problems, then dinner. The peaceful domesticity shattered as glass exploded inward. The window disappeared in a spray of crystalline shards, the bullet's impact sending a spider web of cracks across what remained of the pane. The sound was deafening in their small space. Noah's scream pierced her heart as Mara lunged across the table, covering his body with hers. Glass crunched under her feet as she dragged them both to the floor. "Keep your head down, baby," she whispered, her voice surprisingly steady despite her racing pulse. "Crawl with Mommy to the hall." The building's fire alarm began to shriek, its piercing wail adding to the chaos. Someone must have pulled it in panic. Noah trembled against her as they inched away from the window, his homework forgotten on the table, where the bullet had torn through his math worksheet. The front door burst open. Mara curled tighter around Noah, ready to fight, but Casimir's familiar silhouette filled the doorway. 2 men flanked him, weapons drawn, moving with military precision as they secured the apartment. Casimir crossed to them in 3 long strides, his expression carved from stone as he shrugged off his suit jacket and wrapped it around Mara's shoulders. The fabric was warm from his body, smelling of cedar and something distinctly masculine. "Marcus, sweep the stairwell," he ordered, his accent thicker with tension. "Joseph, pack essentials. 5 minutes." "We can't just—" Mara started to protest. "There's no time to argue." Casimir's tone left no room for discussion. "Staying means dying. Both of you." The words hit her like physical blows. Noah pressed his face into her neck, his tears soaking her collar as Joseph efficiently filled a black duffel bag with clothes and documents from the locations Casimir called out. "His favorite blanket," Mara managed. "The blue one with—" "Already packed," Joseph confirmed, adding Noah's backpack and school supplies. Casimir lifted Noah easily, wrapping him in the requested blanket and positioning it to muffle the continuing shriek of the fire alarm. The boy clung to him instinctively, recognizing safety even in his terror. They moved as a unit to the elevator, Casimir's men creating a protective formation around them. The metal doors seemed to take forever to close, each second exposing them to potential follow-up shots. "Who?" Mara demanded as they descended. "Why?" "Emilio Carbone." Casimir's jaw tightened around the name. "He's a rival who specializes in leveraging old debts for access. The men in the alley were scouts, testing response times and security patterns. The SUV waited at the curb, engine running. Marcus opened the door and they piled in, Noah still wrapped in his blanket cocoon between them. Mara noticed her hands were shaking and pressed them flat against her thighs. Traffic lights blurred past as they wove through the city. Noah's breathing gradually steadied, his death grip on Casimir's shirt loosening slightly as the immediate danger faded. Mara watched police cars race in the opposite direction, likely responding to the alarm they left behind. The SUV descended into an underground garage, passing through multiple security checkpoints before stopping at a private elevator. Casimir guided them inside, his hand steady at the small of Mara's back. The penthouse doors opened with a soft hydraulic hiss, revealing a space that looked more like a fortress than a home. Floor-to-ceiling windows were clearly bulletproof, and subtle cameras covered every angle. A series of locks engaged automatically behind them, the security panel displaying biometric protocols activating. Mara sank onto a leather couch, pulling Noah into her lap. He went willingly, his small body still trembling occasionally. The reality of their situation crashed over her. They couldn't go home. Their little apartment with its mismatched furniture and crayon drawings on the fridge wasn't safe anymore. She looked up at Casimir, who stood watching them with an unreadable expression. This dangerous man who moved like a predator but handled her son with impossible gentleness, who commanded killers but made sure Noah's favorite blanket wasn't forgotten. The truth settled in her chest like lead. There was no middle ground anymore, no way to keep Noah safe without fully entering Casimir's world. The bullet hole in their living room window had shattered more than glass. It had destroyed any illusion that they could stay neutral, stay small, stay unnoticed. Joseph appeared with hot chocolate for Noah and tea for Mara, the domestic gesture surreal against the backdrop of tactical gear and concealed weapons. Noah accepted the mug carefully, his hands steadier now as he sipped the sweet comfort. "The bedroom down the hall is prepared," Casimir said quietly. "There are fresh clothes in the bathroom. Try to rest." Mara nodded, knowing sleep would be impossible, but grateful for the illusion of normalcy. She gathered Noah close, inhaling his familiar scent mixed with the lingering gunpowder and fear. The penthouse's security systems hummed almost imperceptibly, a constant reminder of the barriers between them and the dangers outside. Through the bulletproof glass, city lights twinkled innocently, as if they hadn't just fled from a sniper's scope. Noah's breathing deepened as the adrenaline crash hit him. Mara stroked his hair, remembering how ordinary their evening had begun. Homework and pasta and multiplication tables. Now they sat in a mobster's fortress, their entire life condensed into a single duffel bag, while somewhere in the city, a man named Carbone plotted their deaths. Morning light filtered through bulletproof glass, casting warm squares across heated marble floors. Noah's bare feet made soft padding sounds as he followed the scent of butter and maple syrup, his paper airplane clutched carefully in one hand. He stopped in the doorway of the industrial kitchen, eyes widening at the sight of Casimir, deadly mob boss and apparent pancake master, standing at the professional-grade range. A white bandage peeked from beneath his rolled sleeve as he flipped a perfectly golden disc with practiced ease. "Good morning," Casimir said without turning, his voice gentler than usual. "There are eggs and fruit on the counter if you're hungry." Noah approached cautiously, studying the organized chaos of breakfast preparation. "You cook?" "When necessary." A slight smile touched Casimir's lips as he gestured to Noah's paper plane. "That design could use improvement. The wings need more stability." For the next several minutes, while pancakes sizzled and coffee brewed, Casimir demonstrated precise folds that transformed printer paper into aerodynamic art. Noah watched with intense concentration, mimicking each careful crease. Mara found them testing flight patterns across the kitchen island, Noah's delighted giggles mixing with Casimir's quiet instructions about lift and trajectory. The domestic scene felt surreal against the backdrop of security monitors and the armed guard visible through the window. "We need to discuss arrangements," Casimir said once they'd finished eating. Noah had wandered to the living room with his new fleet of paper aircraft, leaving them alone at the granite counter. "I'm listening." Mara wrapped her hands around a coffee mug, anchor against the morning's strangeness. "You'll keep your job at the diner. Routine is important, and visibility has advantages. My men will escort you, staying discreet but close." His tone left no room for argument on this point. "You have final say in Noah's schedule and activities. I have final say on security measures." Mara nodded slowly. The terms were fair, considering. "Two more things." Casimir's eyes met hers with unwavering intensity. "I will not touch you without explicit permission, and you will not attempt to leave alone. Both are non-negotiable safety measures." The air between them crackled with unspoken tension. Mara forced herself to hold his gaze, ignoring how her skin hummed with awareness of his proximity. They were discussing survival, not whatever this electric pull was between them. "Agreed," she said finally. The day passed in a blur of routine, made strange by constant surveillance. Mara's shift at the diner felt almost normal, except for the subtle presence of Casimir's men positioned strategically throughout the restaurant and street. As she wiped down tables for closing, the relative peace shattered. The first spray of bullets sent glass exploding inward from the front windows. Before Mara could process what was happening, Casimir materialized beside her, dragging her down behind the counter. His body covered hers as more shots peppered the diner. She felt the moment impact found him. A sharp inhale, his shoulder tensing against her back. Still, he didn't move until the shooting stopped and his men confirmed the area was clear. "You're hurt," Mara said as they made their way to the SUV, his weight heavy against her side. "Graze." But his jaw was tight with pain, blood darkening his sleeve. Back in the penthouse, Mara led him to the guest bathroom. Her hands trembled as she helped him remove his jacket and shirt, revealing the angry wound across his shoulder. Years of patching up her own injuries had taught her enough first aid for this. She cleaned the graze with steady determination, trying to ignore the map of old scars across his chest and back. Each one told a story of survival she wasn't ready to hear. Casimir sat perfectly still as she worked, watching her face in the mirror. "Thank you," he said roughly as she finished the last stitch. His hand caught hers where it rested on his uninjured shoulder. "The world will never touch what's mine. I swear it." The possessive declaration should have angered her. Instead, it sent heat curling through her chest. She stepped back, needing distance from the intensity rolling off him in waves. Later, lying in her bed, on the other side of the wall from his room, Mara stared at the ceiling and admitted uncomfortable truths to herself. She had felt safer with his body shielding hers than she had in years of running and hiding. His presence, which should have been threatening, instead made her feel protected in a way she'd never known. She hated needing anyone, hated that her son's safety now depended on this dangerous man, hated most of all that some part of her had recognized him instantly, the wounded predator in that late-night diner, and wanted to soothe his pain as much as she wanted to run from his power. Noah's soft snores drifted through the wall, peaceful despite the day's violence. In the hallway, guards moved with quiet efficiency, maintaining the fortress that now contained her world. Somewhere beyond the bulletproof glass, enemies plotted and waited. But here, in this strange sanctuary, Mara finally let exhaustion pull her under, trying not to think about the man whose protection felt increasingly like salvation. The night wrapped around the penthouse like a shroud, city lights twinkling innocently beyond the windows. In the security room, cameras tracked movement on surrounding streets while encrypted communications crackled between patrol units. And in adjacent rooms, two people lay awake, each fighting their own battle between duty and desire, neither willing to admit how quickly walls were crumbling. The city hadn't yet stirred when Mara padded into the kitchen, drawn by the soft glow of under-cabinet lights. Casimir stood at the window, his reflection ghost-like against the pre-dawn darkness. His shoulders carried the weight of sleepless hours. "You should rest," she said quietly, moving to the coffee maker. "Your shoulder needs time to heal." "Some wounds don't heal with time." His voice was rough, stripped of its usual control. When he turned, the hollow darkness in his eyes matched that first night in the diner. Mara set down the coffee pot, recognition clicking into place. "The tears that night. You weren't just tired, were you?" "No." He pressed his palms flat against the counter. "My brother, Nikolai. Carbone's people executed him a week before, left him in a gutter like garbage." The admission hung heavy between them. Mara thought of Noah sleeping down the hall, how losing him would shatter her world beyond repair. She stepped closer, close enough to see the muscle working in Casimir's jaw. "Tell me," she said softly. "Carbone has a method. He finds old debts, uses them as bait, threatens innocent people to force his enemy's hand." Casimir's knuckles went white against the granite. "He wanted to see how I'd react to losing what I protect. Now he's using you the same way." Mara's stomach dropped. "What do you mean, using me?" "Your mother." He met her eyes in the dim light. "She ran numbers for Carbone's organization years ago before she disappeared. That's why your name was on their list, why they came collecting a dead woman's debt." The coffee grew cold between them as Mara processed this, her mother's secrets reaching from the grave to strangle her present. Did moving in here make Noah safer, or did it just paint a bigger target on his back? "Both can be true." Casimir straightened, something fierce crossing his face. But now you're behind walls that bite back. Every inch of this building has teeth. Later, as they drove Noah to school, Casimir's security detail radioed movement, a man in a gray cap watching from across the street. Without missing a beat, Casimir redirected their route, taking side streets while issuing quiet commands through his earpiece. "Extra car near the playground," he told his team. "I want eyes on every approach." Mara watched Noah through the rearview mirror, happily folding a paper airplane in his booster seat, oblivious to the danger circling their lives. Her son's innocence felt both precious and precarious. The day stretched long with tension, Mara jumping at every sudden movement during her shift. Casimir's men maintained their vigil, shadows with purpose, while she served coffee and tried to act normal. Evening found them in the penthouse, Noah insisting on a movie before bed. He wedged himself between them on the massive leather couch, clutching his newest paper plane. The animated film filled the room with bright colors and cheerful music that felt surreal against their reality. Mara watched her son's eyes grow heavy, his head eventually dropping against Casimir's uninjured shoulder. The sight squeezed something in her chest, this dangerous man who could snap, next now cradling her sleeping child with infinite gentleness. They sat in comfortable silence as the movie played on, Noah's peaceful breathing a counterpoint to the adventure on screen. The space between Mara and Casimir felt charged with unspoken things. Questions about trust and protection, about the way his presence both unsettled and steadied her. She caught him watching her in the television's blue glow, his expression soft in a way that made her heart stutter. When their eyes met, neither looked away. The moment stretched, full of possibility and warning. Noah shifted in his sleep, one small hand fisted in Casimir's shirt, the other clutching Mara's sleeve, bridging the gap between them like a physical reminder of what was at stake. The credits rolled, casting shifting shadows across their faces. Neither moved to wake Noah, preserving this pocket of peace where they could pretend to be something simpler than they were. Outside, the city hummed with threat and promise. Inside, they remained frozen in this tableau, a sleeping child between them and an ocean of words they couldn't yet speak flowing in the space between their carefully maintained distance. Mara watched Casimir's hand hover protectively over Noah's head, remembered how those same fingers had dealt violence in the alley, now gentle as butterfly wings. The contradictions in this man kept stealing her breath. Ruthless protector, wounded avenger, unexpected source of safety in her storm. City lights sparkled beyond the bulletproof glass, deceptively peaceful. The penthouse's security systems hummed quietly, scanning for threats while they sat in this bubble of borrowed normalcy. Tomorrow would bring new dangers, more chess moves in Carbone's deadly game. But for now they had this moment, a child's trust, a warrior's vigilance, and a woman learning that sometimes the scariest thing isn't needing protection, but wanting to stay behind the walls that offer it. Noah's paper plane sat forgotten on the coffee table, a small reminder of childhood persistence in a world gone sharp with adult complications. The distance between Mara and Casimir measured barely 2 feet, yet contained worlds of uncertainty. They remained there, separated by a sleeping child and the weight of everything they couldn't say, while the city spun on around their fortress of momentary peace. Morning light streamed through the penthouse windows as Mara nursed her second coffee, watching Casimir's security team pin surveillance photos to a massive digital board. The images showed familiar streets transformed into a predator's playground, her routes to work, Noah's school, their old apartment building. "The pattern doesn't align with boss's movements," one of the men said, tracing lines between timestamps. "Gray cap shows up specifically during your shifts, Mrs. Quinn." Casimir stood motionless by the window, his reflection a dark slash against the city backdrop. "Someone's feeding your schedule. The question is who?" The team scrolled through more photos while Mara's stomach churned. Each image showed the same figure, always in that gray baseball cap, always lurking just at the edges of her daily life. The thought of being watched made her skin crawl. "There's this," another guard said, pulling up cell tower data. "Santo's phone pinged near the diner during the shooting. He claims he was stuck in traffic, but the timing..." Mara studied Santo's elegant profile in a security still. Casimir's consigliere looked exactly as she remembered from their brief meetings. Perfectly pressed suit, patrician features, the kind of polished charm that seemed almost too practiced. The delayed response during the attack could mark him as suspicious. But something about the cap kept nagging at her. She stepped closer to the board, zooming in on the clearest shot. The fabric was worn at the brim, stained with what looked like kitchen grease. "Wait," she said, recognition clicking. "That's not just any cap. It's part of our uniform." Casimir turned from the window, his attention laser-focused. Explain. The dishwasher at the diner overheats. Management started giving out caps to keep sweat out of people's eyes. Mara's mind raced through implications. And Lou, my manager, he's been really flexible with my schedule lately, approving all my shift swaps, asking about Noah. She remembered Lou's seemingly casual questions about Noah's school, his route, his afternoon activities. At the time, she'd thought he was just being considerate of a single mom's scheduling needs. How long? Casimir's voice had gone dangerously soft. A few months. He started being extra helpful right around when... She trailed off, realizing it coincided with her mother's death, when Carbone's people would have started looking for leverage. Casimir nodded to his team. Pick him up quietly, no scenes that might spook bigger fish. The men moved with practiced efficiency, gathering gear while maintaining their professional calm. Mara watched them prep, her thoughts spinning. Lou had seemed so normal, nervous sometimes, sure, but who wasn't in this city? The idea that he'd been watching her, reporting on her son. You're certain about this? Casimir asked, moving closer. His presence steadied her, even as it reminded her what he was capable of. The timing fits. And last week, he asked specifically about Noah's after-school program, wanted to know if I needed schedule adjustments for pickup times. The memory made her nauseous now. I told him everything! Casimir's jaw tightened. He won't speak to anyone else about Noah again. The quiet certainty in his voice sent a shiver down her spine. She knew what happened on rooftops in this world, had heard whispers even before getting tangled in Casimir's orbit. Part of her wanted Lou to suffer for endangering her child. Another part remembered him covering shifts when Noah had the flu, lending her cash between paychecks. What will you do? She asked, though she already knew. Get answers. Casimir checked his phone as coordinates came in. Truth comes easier at altitude. The security team moved out in waves, professional and discreet. No sirens would announce this extraction. Lou would simply disappear from his morning routine, reappear somewhere high above the city where questions had gravity and lies cost more than pride. Mara walked to the balcony, gripping the rail as she watched a black SUV pull away from the building. The morning air felt sharp in her lungs. Below, the city carried on, oblivious to the currents of power and betrayal flowing through its streets. She thought of Noah, safe at school behind layers of Casimir's security. Thought of Lou's nervous smile and helpful demeanor, a mask hiding whatever desperation or greed had made him sell her family's safety to Carbone's people. The SUV disappeared around a corner, carrying Lou toward his reckoning. Mara squared her shoulders, decision crystallizing. She would be there when they questioned him. Not to stop Casimir, Lou's choices had surrendered that mercy, but to look in his eyes and understand why, to make sure the punishment fit the crime of endangering her child. Her phone buzzed, a message from Casimir with an address. She took one last look at the city sprawled below, its shadows and secrets spreading like ink through water. Then she turned back inside to grab her jacket. There were answers waiting on a rooftop, and she intended to hear them all. The morning sun climbed higher, warming the balcony rail beneath her fingers. Soon it would illuminate whatever truth Lou had been hiding behind that helpful smile. Soon she would know exactly what kind of betrayal she was dealing with. And then she would decide how much mercy to allow. The rooftop door groaned open against the wind. Two of Casimir's men dragged Lou forward, his feet stumbling on concrete. The city stretched gray and indifferent below them, clouds hanging low enough to touch. Please, Lou wheezed. This is all just a misunderstanding. Quiet. Casimir's voice cut through the air like steel. He held up a stack of papers, letting them flutter in the breeze. Bank records, burner phone logs, 6 separate payments from shell companies we've already traced to Carbone. Lou's face went slack, then crumpled into something between a grimace and a smile. Look, times are tough. You know how it is. Do I? Casimir stepped closer, his shadow falling across Lou's face. Tell me how it is. Selling information about a child. I never meant... Lou's words dissolved into a yelp as one of the men tightened his grip. Mara watched from near the door, her arms crossed against the chill. The morning light caught the sweat beading on Lou's forehead, the tremor in his hands. He looked smaller up here, stripped of his usual nervous charm. 3 weeks ago, Casimir continued, you made a call from the diner's back alley. 8 minutes long. The next day, someone tried to grab Mara's phone. Coincidence? Lou's eyes darted between them. It was just supposed to be surveillance. They said they needed leverage on you. And Noah was convenient leverage. Mara's voice surprised even her. steady despite the rage churning beneath it. My 7-year-old son? They were going to break my legs. I owed money, big money, and Carbone's people said they'd take over the debt if I just kept them informed. Lou's words tumbled out faster now. I didn't know they'd shoot at anyone. Casimir moved with liquid grace, grabbing Lou's right hand. Perhaps we start with your fingers. See what else you've forgotten to mention. Wait! Mara stepped forward, placing herself between them. The rooftop air crackled with tension. Not here. Casimir's eyes met hers, dark with controlled violence. She didn't flinch. This building is Noah's home now, she said quietly. It won't smell like blood and fear. Find another way. Something shifted in Casimir's expression. Surprise? Respect? Maybe both. He released Lou's hand, but kept his grip on the man's shoulder, fingers digging in until Lou whimpered. Your phone, Casimir ordered. Call your handler, now. Lou fumbled the device from his pocket. Casimir switched it to speaker, and a gruff voice answered on the third ring. The hell you want, Lou? It's not check-in time. I need to move the package, Lou stammered. The usual spot's hot. Christ, you're useless. Fine. Take it to the depot on Marshall, container 217. The line went dead. Casimir's men were already tracking the signal, confirming the location. One showed Casimir a tablet, satellite view of an industrial storage facility. Matches 2 gray cap sightings, the man murmured. Loading dock cameras caught him Tuesday and Friday. Casimir nodded. Get a team there. Full sweep. He turned to Lou, who had sagged between his captors. As for you, Judge Chen likes to make examples of those who endanger children. I'm sure he'll find you an appropriate cellmate. Please, Lou tried one last time. I was desperate. So am I, Casimir replied softly. Take him. They watched Lou disappear through the roof access. Mara's hands were shaking, delayed adrenaline flooding her system. She turned toward the stairs, needing to move, to process. Casimir caught her arm in the stairwell. The fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across his face, but his touch was gentle. Are you all right? No, she admitted. I trusted him. He knew Noah's schedule, his routines. Her voice broke. Then Casimir's mouth was on hers, or maybe she moved first. It didn't matter. The kiss exploded between them like a storm finally breaking. His hands cupped her face while hers fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer. There was nothing soft about it, nothing accidental. This was recognition, inevitability, the voltage that had been building since that first night in the U diner finally finding ground. Mara gasped when Casimir backed her against the wall, his body caging her in. The contrast of cold concrete and his warmth made her dizzy. His tongue swept into her mouth, claiming, questioning, and she answered by arching into him, one hand sliding into his hair. They broke apart, breathing hard. Casimir's pupils were blown wide, his usual control fracturing. Mara could feel his heart hammering where their chests pressed together. This is, she started. Complicated, he finished, resting his forehead against hers. Noah comes first, she said firmly. His safety, his stability. Always. Casimir's thumb traced her cheekbone. But don't ask me to pretend this isn't real. Mara closed her eyes, overwhelmed by the truth of it. The lines she'd drawn between them, protector and protected, dangerous and safe, had been dissolving for days. Now they felt like fiction, like trying to draw borders on water. We should, she gestured vaguely upstairs. Yes. But neither of them moved. The stairwell hummed with fluorescent light and unspoken words. Somewhere above, Noah was probably wondering where his breakfast was. Somewhere across the city, Casimir's men were closing in on a storage depot. And here, caught between concrete and skin, Mara finally admitted that whatever this was between them had stopped being a choice the moment he stepped between her and danger in that rain-slick alley. Casimir brushed one last kiss across her lips, feather-light and full of promise, before stepping back. The space between them felt electric, charged with everything they weren't saying. For now, that would have to be enough. The elevator dinged, and the security guard's voice crackled through Casimir's intercom. Sir, there's a Colt Mercer demanding to see his son. Says if we don't let him up, there'll be consequences. Mara's coffee mug froze halfway to her lips. That name, a ghost she'd thought long buried, sent ice through her veins. He's Noah's father, she explained to Casimir, who had already pulled up surveillance feeds. On screen, a man in a wrinkled jacket paced the lobby, running fingers through unkempt hair. I haven't seen him since Noah was 6 months old. Your call, Casimir said, but his jaw was tight. We can have him removed. Mara shook her head. No, let me handle this. The cafe downstairs, it's secure? Like everything else in this building. He touched his earpiece. Anton, escort Mr. Mercer to Cafe Luna, standard protocols. The cafe was all sleek chrome and warm wood, designed to feel welcoming while maintaining clear sightlines. Mara chose a corner table where she could see both exits. When Colt swaggered in, she barely recognized him. 7 years had worn deep lines around his mouth, and his eyes darted everywhere like a trapped animal's. Hey, sugar, he drawled, dropping into the chair across from her. The smell of stale beer and cheaper cologne made her stomach turn. Nice digs. You trading up these days? What do you want, Colt? Can't a father want to see his kid? His smile was practiced, desperate. I'm clean now, Mara. Got my act together. Noah deserves to know his old man, right? Every word rang false, like counterfeit coins hitting marble. Before she could respond, her phone buzzed, a message from Casimir with an attachment. Security footage showed Colt behind Murphy's betting parlor just hours ago, speaking with a sharp-dressed man whose face matched Carbone's lieutenant in their threat assessment files. Another message followed. Noah's backpack tracker showed movement at unusual times, correlating with school security drills. Mara's blood ran cold. She turned the phone toward Colt, watching his face crumple as he recognized himself in the grainy footage. Want to try that again? Shit! He scrubbed his hands over his face. Shit! 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 Casimir materialized beside their table, silent as a shadow. 2 guards positioned themselves near the exits. Mr. Mercer, perhaps we should continue this conversation upstairs. In Casimir's office, Colt's bravado melted under the weight of evidence spread across screens. Time-stamped footage, bank records, phone logs. He folded like a house of cards in a storm. They said they'd clear my markers, he babbled. 50 grand, just wiped away. All I had to do was keep tabs on the kids' schedule, maybe leave a door unlocked during those safety drills they do. His eyes darted to Mara. I wouldn't let them hurt him, I swear. You absolute coward. Mara's voice shook. He's your son. I can help you disappear tonight, Casimir offered, his tone deceptively gentle. New identity, fresh start, in exchange for testimony against Carbone's organization. My people can have you across state lines before dawn. Hope flickered across Colt's face, quickly replaced by fear. You don't know these guys like I do. They've got people everywhere. So do I. But Colt was already backing toward the door. I can't. I'm sorry. I can't. Colt, Mara called after him. If you walk out that door... He ran. Casimir's voice cut through the silence he left behind. You understand what this means? He's chosen his side. Mara nodded, numb. The man she'd once thought she loved, who had given her Noah, her beautiful, brave boy, would always choose self-preservation over everything else, even his own child's safety. I'm tripling security at Noah's school, Casimir continued. And I'm bringing in Jenna Park. She's a trauma nurse who works with my organization, completely off books, completely trustworthy. She'll be on call for any emergency. A knock interrupted them. Jenna entered, all quiet competence in surgical scrubs and a leather jacket. Her steady gaze assessed Mara without judgment. I've reviewed Noah's medical history, she said. I'll shadow at a distance, but I can be there in minutes if needed. The school nurse has my contact info under an alias. Mara forced herself to focus on logistics, on next steps, on anything but the hollow ache in her chest. Thank you. I need to check on Noah. She found him in his room, surrounded by paper planes and action figures. His smile, so much like Colt's but somehow untainted, made her throat tight. Everything okay, Mom? Everything's fine, baby. She sat on his bed, smoothing his wild hair. How about pancakes for breakfast tomorrow? Nice and boring, just how we like it. With chocolate chips? Obviously. She tucked him in, breathing in his clean little boy smell. Sweet dreams, my brave boy. Noah was asleep almost instantly, trustful and safe in his fortress bedroom. Mara envied that peace, knowing she'd spend another night staring at the ceiling, calculating threats, and watching shadows move across walls. In the hallway, she found Casimir waiting, his presence solid and sure as gravity. He chose wrong, she said quietly. He always chooses wrong. Casimir's hand found hers in the dim light, warm and calloused and real. Then we choose better. We choose Noah. Always. She squeezed his fingers, letting his strength anchor her. Tomorrow would bring new dangers, new decisions. But tonight, Her son slept peaceful in his bed, guarded by a man who understood that love meant putting someone else's safety before your own survival. It wasn't the family she'd imagined, but maybe it was the one they all needed. Morning sunlight painted the penthouse kitchen gold as Noah constructed an elaborate syrup moat around his stack of chocolate chip pancakes. "If you build the walls higher," Casimir suggested, sliding another pancake onto the boy's plate, "you can contain more syrup inside the fortress." Noah's eyes lit up. "Like a castle." Mara watched them from the coffee maker, something warm unfurling in her chest despite her sleepless night. These quiet moments felt stolen, precious. The peace shattered at 10:47 a.m. Her phone buzzed with a text from Jenna. "Emergency evacuation at school. Fire alarm standing by." Before Mara could respond, another message. "Something's wrong. Multiple adults in security uniforms I don't recognize." Then, "Noah's gone." The world tilted sideways. Mara's coffee mug shattered on the kitchen floor as she ran for the door, Casimir already barking orders into his phone. They arrived to chaos. Police cruisers blocked the street, their lights painting everything in urgent red and blue. Teachers herded frightened children back inside, while officers took statements from witnesses who all said the same thing. A man in a security windbreaker had led Noah to a white van during the evacuation, looking so official that no one questioned it. 3 minutes. That's all it took to steal her world. Casimir prowled the scene like a caged predator, his men spreading out to canvass the area while he interrogated the school's actual security team. His face had gone chalk white, but his eyes burned with something that made hardened cops step back. The burner phone in Mara's pocket, the one she'd been given for emergencies, started ringing. "Mrs. Quinn." The voice was cultured, almost gentle. "I trust I have your attention." "Where is my son?" Her voice didn't sound like her own. "Safe for now. I'm Emilio Carbone. I believe you've heard of me." Mara's fingers went numb around the phone. Behind her, Casimir had gone absolutely still, listening. "The terms are simple," Carbone continued. "Mr. Volkov will transfer control of his port operations to my organization by midnight. All documentation, access codes, and personnel lists. In exchange, your boy comes home unharmed. Refuse, and..." A pause, heavy with implication. "Well, children are so fragile, aren't they? Let me speak to him." "Mom," Noah's voice was small but steady. "Mom, I'm okay. The man says..." The line went dead. Casimir was already moving, coordinating strikes through his Bluetooth. "Hit everything. Every warehouse, every front business, every known associate. I want Carbone's entire operation burning within the hour." "Sir," Santo appeared with a tablet. "First team is in position at the shipping yard." "Execute." Mara grabbed Casimir's arm. "If you start a war and my son dies because you wouldn't give up your precious territory, I will find him." His voice was arctic. "And then I will dismantle Carbone piece by piece for daring to touch what's mine." "He's not yours." The words exploded out of her. "He's mine, and if your pride gets him killed, I swear to God, I will burn everything you love to the ground, including you." Something flickered in Casimir's eyes. Pain or recognition or both. But he was already turning away, issuing more orders, mobilizing an army to tear the city apart. Mara stood in the chaos, her mind racing. Think. There had to be something they were missing, some thread. Her mother. The thought hit like lightning. Her mother had worked for Carbone's organization years ago. There might be something, some detail. She found one of Casimir's men, Victor, the one who sometimes forgot to secure his backup piece in the kitchen drawer. It took seconds to palm the pistol while he coordinated with the strike teams. Up in the penthouse, Mara's hands shook as she dug through the box of her mother's belongings she'd never had the heart to throw away. Old photos, paperwork, birthday cards, there. A postcard from 15 years ago, the handwriting faded but clear. "Weather's nice at the old Marina Inn. You know the one where C likes his quiet nights away from the noise. Room 12 still has that view of the harbor you loved." Mara's mother had run numbers for Carbone's operation. She would have known his habits, his hideouts. The Marina Inn was abandoned now, condemned for years, but it sat right at the edge of the disputed port territory, the perfect place to hold someone while waiting for midnight. Outside, sirens wailed as Casimir's war began. Smoke rose from 3 different parts of the city. But Mara knew in her bones that Noah wasn't in any of those places. Carbone was too smart, too theatrical for that. He'd want somewhere meaningful, somewhere that proved his point about territory and control. She checked Victor's pistol, loaded, safety on, and slipped it into her jacket pocket. Casimir would have men watching all the exits, but she'd grown up learning how to disappear when needed. There would be a way out. There had to be. Because Casimir might be willing to sacrifice everything for his vendetta, but Mara had only one priority: bringing her son home. Everything else, pride, power, even justice, could burn. She memorized the address from the postcard and pulled up rideshare app, selecting a pickup point 3 blocks away. Her hands had stopped shaking. Fear crystallized into purpose, into clarity. "Hold on, baby," she whispered. "Mama's coming." The service elevator hummed softly as Mara descended, her heart thundering against her ribs. She'd left her phone on her nightstand, a breadcrumb for the security team to follow. The weight of Victor's pistol pressed against her side, cold comfort against colder fear. She texted the guard from a burner. "Taking a walk to clear my head. Let them track that signal. Let them think she was falling apart instead of hunting." The address from her mother's postcard led to a squat building with peeling paint and a faded chiropractic sign. But something was off. A low mechanical hum that didn't belong in an abandoned structure. Generator noise bleeding through cinder block walls. Mara circled to the side alley, pressing close to shadow. A door cracked open, spilling yellow light across wet pavement. She recognized Jenna Park's silhouette immediately, the nurse's steady hands working over a man slumped against the wall. "Hold still," Jenna murmured, wrapping gauze around the man's bicep. The bleeding's almost stopped. The injured man, one of Carbone's by his clothes, wheezed. "They don't keep the kids here long, 2 hours max before transport, laundry truck." He coughed wetly. "Don't tell them I—" "Shh." Jenna's voice was soft but firm. "No one's telling anyone anything." Mara's fingers clenched around the gun in her pocket. 2 hours max. How long had Noah already been here? Jenna's eyes met hers across the alley. No surprise showed on the nurse's face. Just a quick, deliberate glance at her watch, then down at a scrap of paper by her knee. When she shifted to reach for more gauze, Mara saw the note clearly. 90, min, next transfer. A hand closed around Mara's arm. She whirled, weapon half drawn, but it was one of Casimir's men. Marcus, the quiet one who sometimes brought Noah comic books. Behind him, 2 more emerged from the shadows, moving with precise efficiency. Of course the guard had alerted them instantly. Of course they'd been watching, waiting to see where she led them. "Boss is 3 minutes out," Marcus said quietly. "You okay?" Mara nodded, holstering the gun. Her pulse was still racing, but the fear had crystallized into something sharper, more focused. "I need to talk to him. I found something." Casimir arrived like a storm front, his usual controlled presence fractured by barely contained violence. But when he saw Mara, something in his face cracked, relief warring with terror. "You could have been taken too," he said, voice rough. "I needed to see for myself." Mara gestured toward the building. "Jenna's in there, treating one of Carbone's men. They're moving kids through here every 2 hours by laundry truck. Noah—" Her voice caught. "Noah might already be gone." "Show me everything you saw." She did, walking him through the layout, the generator noise, Jenna's coded message. As she spoke, she watched him shift from raw emotion back into tactical precision, filing away details and adjusting plans. "Wait," he held up a hand. "Jenna's inside?" "Yes, treating wounds." "And you said the man she's working on is Carbone's?" Mara nodded. "By his clothes, yes." Casimir's expression darkened. "That's the 3rd person under my protection that Carbone has accessed. First Noah, then that guard at the school who used to work security for my brother, now Jenna." "What do you mean?" "He's not after the ports." Casimir ran a hand through his hair, agitation breaking through his control. "He's collecting people I've claimed protection over. Anyone I've shown interest in keeping safe. The ports are just leverage. This is about making me watch while he takes apart everything I've built." Understanding hit Mara like ice water. "He's trying to prove you can't protect what's yours." "Yes," Casimir's hands clenched. "And he's using my brother's death as a template. Take what matters, make me watch it break, wait for surrender." Mara touched his arm, felt the tremors running through his rigid frame. "Hey, look at me." He did, his eyes storm-dark and haunted. "We're going to get Noah back," she said firmly. "Not in days, not after some midnight deadline. Today, now, because you're not alone this time, you've got me, and I'm not surrendering anything." Something shifted in Casimir's expression, a softening around his eyes, a steadying of his breath. He cupped her face in hands that shook slightly, thumbs brushing her cheeks. "We'll bring him home," he promised, the words raw and absolute. "In hours, not days, whatever it costs." Mara leaned into his touch for just a moment, drawing strength from his certainty. Then she straightened, mind already racing ahead to next steps. "The laundry truck is our window," she said. 90 minutes, if we track the route." "Already on it," Casimir touched his earpiece. "Santo, I need eyes on every commercial laundry service in a 20-mile radius. Focus on companies with recent ownership changes or unusual delivery patterns." He paused, listening. "And get me satellite thermal imaging of this block. If they're moving that many people through, there's a heat signature we can trace." Around them, his men moved with renewed purpose, coordinating positions and gathering intel. Mara watched Casimir slide back into his role as commander, but now she saw the human cracks in his armor, the way his hands still trembled when he thought no one was looking, the tension in his jaw that spoke of barely contained fear. He wasn't just a powerful man waging war anymore. He was a protector watching his worst nightmare unfold again, desperate not to fail those under his care a second time. But this time was different. This time he wasn't fighting alone. Mara checked her weapon one last time as Casimir's team moved into position. 90 minutes to intercept a laundry truck, 90 minutes to prove Carbone wrong about protection and power, 90 minutes to bring their boy home. The warehouse loomed against the night sky, a hulking shadow on the riverfront. Floodlights suddenly blazed to life, casting harsh white beams across loading bays and chain-link fences. Smoke grenades hissed, releasing thick clouds that rolled across the concrete. Casimir's voice crackled through Mara's earpiece. "Teams 1 and 2, breach east and west, cut power on my mark." His tone was ice cold, stripped of everything but lethal focus. "Mara, wait for the blackout." She pressed against the rusty service door, memorized building plans burning in her mind. The basement access was 30 yards straight ahead, then left past the old refrigeration units. Her hands trembled on the bolt cutters, but her grip was firm. 3, 2, 1, execute. The floodlights died, glass shattered as tactical teams breached multiple entry points. Radio chatter exploded through their enemies' frequencies, degrading into static as jammers kicked in. Mara slipped inside, counting steps in the darkness. Emergency lights cast sickly green shadows. The service corridor was narrow, forcing her to turn sideways past ancient pipes. Every footfall seemed too loud, every breath a betrayal. Voices echoed from above, shouts, running feet, the percussion of flashbangs. Casimir's teams pushing inward, drawing attention up while she went down. The basement stairs creaked under her weight. Cold air carried the smell of mildew and fear. Metal cages lined the walls, most empty. Her heart hammered against her ribs. "Twinkle, twinkle, little star," she whispered, through steel slats, the lullaby she sang every night. "How I wonder what you—" A broken sob answered. "Mama?" Noah huddled in the corner of the last cage, knees pulled tight to his chest. His dinosaur t-shirt was dirty, but his eyes were clear, focused on her face like she was sunlight. "Baby, I need you to be very quiet now." Mara's hands shook as she positioned the bolt cutters. The padlock was cheap, carelessly left by a guard who never expected anyone to reach this far. It snapped with a dull crack. Noah flew into her arms. She pressed kisses to his hair, breathing in his familiar scent under the basement's dank air. "We're going home, baby. Just stay close and—" "Touching." The voice emerged from shadow, cultured and amused. "Though I'd wait on promises about going home." Emilio Carbone stepped into the green emergency light, elegant in a tailored suit despite the chaos above, his pistol pressed cold against Mara's spine. "You see, this is exactly the problem." He sighed, as if lecturing wayward children. "Women like you ruin men like him, make them weak, make them forget what they are." Footsteps on the stairs. Casimir appeared in the doorway, weapon raised, then slowly lowering as he took in the scene. "Let them go, Emilio." His voice was quiet, dangerous. "You want me? Here I am." "Oh, I want more than that." Carbone's gun dug harder into Mara's back. "I want you to understand, like your brother understood. At the end, power built on protection is power waiting to collapse." Casimir's eyes met Mara's. In that split second, she read everything he couldn't say. "Live for me. Keep Noah safe. I'm sorry." She stumbled, as if her legs had given out, driving her shoulder up and back into Carbone's weapon hand. The gun discharged into the ceiling as Casimir fired once, clean and precise. Carbone fell without another word, the bullet finding the space between his eyes. In the ringing silence, another figure emerged from behind a support column. Santo Ricci, immaculate even now, training a second weapon on Casimir's heart. "I truly am sorry," Santo said softly. "But he was right about one thing. You've grown weak." Mara didn't hesitate. The pistol she'd taken earlier barked in her hands, the recoil shocking up her arms. Santo staggered as the round took him in the thigh. Casimir's follow-up shot punched through Santo's chest, ending years of friendship and betrayal in a single moment. The basement fell silent except for Noah's quiet crying and the distant wail of approaching sirens. Mara gathered her son close, feeling him tremble against her. Casimir's hand, spattered with blood but infinitely gentle, came to rest on both their shoulders. "My teams have secured the building," he said quietly. "We need to move." Mara nodded, lifting Noah into her arms. He buried his face in her neck, small fingers clutching her shirt. They climbed the stairs together, leaving the green-lit basement behind. Water dripped somewhere in the darkness, mixing with the crunch of broken glass under their feet. The warehouse's main floor was hazy with dissipating smoke, punctuated by flashlight beams as Casimir's men conducted final sweeps. Through the loading bay doors, emergency lights painted the wet night in strobing red and blue. Casimir guided them toward a black SUV idling in the shadows, its engine a low purr beneath the growing chorus of sirens. Noah hadn't spoken since his first sob of "Mama." He clung to Mara as she slid into the vehicle's back seat, Casimir close behind them. The interior smelled of leather and gunpowder. As they pulled away from the warehouse, Mara caught glimpses of organized chaos. Through the tinted windows, police cruisers screaming past, tactical teams establishing perimeters, evidence teams preparing to document the night's violence. She looked down at Noah, already half asleep against her chest, then at Casimir. His face was set in harsh lines, adrenaline still riding his system, but his hand when it found hers was steady and warm. They had done it, found their boy, survived the night, ended the threat. But as police lights painted the car's interior in alternating red and blue, Mara knew their story wasn't finished. There would be questions, investigations, loose ends to tie up. The violence they'd left behind would ripple outward, touching everything. For now, though, she held her son and felt Casimir's strength beside her, and let that be enough. The nightmares came like clockwork those first 3 nights. Noah would wake screaming, tangled in sheets damp with sweat. Mara would find him already wrapped in Casimir's arms, the big man murmuring soft words in multiple languages until the trembling stopped. By the 4th night, exhaustion won. Noah slept through until morning, his paper planes lined up on the windowsill like silent guardians. "Kids are resilient," Jenna Park said over coffee that week, her medical bag packed for another house call. She'd found her footing quickly, converting a brownstone apartment into a discreet clinic where those who couldn't risk hospitals could find care. "He has both of you. That makes all the difference." Mara watched her son across the playground, laughing as he chased leaves in the autumn wind. The security detail maintained their distance, almost invisible unless you knew where to look. "I never thought I'd feel safe again after everything." "Safety is relative." Jenna's smile held hard-won wisdom. "But having people who'd burn the world down to protect you? That's not nothing." The legal aftermath moved with surprising efficiency. Lou Ferris sang like a star to the judge in Casimir's pocket, his testimony dismantling 3 of Carbone's major operations. Money laundries, betting parlors, loan shark fronts, all seized and shuttered within weeks. "Your mother would be proud," Casimir said one evening, sliding a thick envelope across the kitchen counter. Mara opened it to find the penthouse deed transferred to her name. "I can't accept this," she protested, but he caught her hands in his. "It's not about money or control, it's a promise. This place is yours, whether I'm in it or not. No one can take it from you." She traced the edge of the paper, understanding what he wasn't saying. No more running, no more starting over, no more mercy at the whims of others. "Thank you," she whispered, and his kiss tasted like forever. The foundation came next, built from converted assets and staffed by people who understood both sides of the street. They identified families trapped in escalating debt schemes, offering clean starts before the sharks could circle. Each success felt like redemption, not just for Mara's mother, but for everyone who'd ever been caught between bad choices and worse ones. Colt's surrender surprised no one. He showed up at the federal building with a bargaining chip, detailed records of Carbone's betting operations, and took the witness protection deal he'd refused before. "He'll never contact Noah again," Casimir assured her as they watched the transport vehicle pull away. "New identity, new state, new life. It's done." The autumn wind grew sharp as October deepened, carrying the bite of coming winter. Noah didn't seem to notice the cold as he raced along the pier, launching paper plane after paper plane into the gusts that swept off the water. "Watch!" he called. "This one's special!" The folded paper caught an updraft, curved in a graceful arc, and sailed back toward them like a homing pigeon. Noah whooped in triumph as he caught it. Mara felt Casimir's stance shift beside her, tension threading through his frame. She turned to find him watching her with an intensity that stole her breath. "I need to say something," he began, voice rough. "And I need you to let me finish before you answer." She nodded, heart suddenly racing. "I am what I am," he continued. "Violence lives in my bones. Power runs in my blood. I can't change that, and I won't pretend to be something softer for the world's comfort." He took her hands, his calloused fingers gentle against her skin. "But with you, with Noah, I find peace I never thought possible. You make me want to build instead of break, to protect instead of destroy." His thumb traced her knuckles. "I am lethal to everyone else and gentle only to you. That will never change, not until the last light leaves me." The wind caught her hair, carrying the salt, sharp scent of the harbor. Behind them, Noah's laughter rang bright against the gray sky. "Marry me," Casimir said simply. "Not because you need protection or because I need control. Marry me because we've both learned that love doesn't have to be a cage." That evening, the penthouse glowed warm against the gathering dark. Dinner dishes sat forgotten in the sink while Noah sprawled on the couch, dead to the world with a half-folded paper plane on his chest. Mara stood at the window, watching city lights bloom below like earthbound stars. Casimir's reflection appeared behind her, solid and real and hers. She turned, caught the front of his shirt in her fingers, and drew him down until her lips brushed his throat. "Yes," she whispered against his skin. His arms came around her, strong and sheer, as the night settled soft around them. Not borrowed time anymore, but earned. Not a temporary shelter, but home. The city hummed below, its rhythm familiar now rather than threatening. Inside their fortress of glass and steel, they had built something stronger than violence, more lasting than power. Noah stirred on the couch, mumbling about paper planes and blue skies. Casimir's hand found Mara's, their fingers, intertwining as naturally as breathing. Outside, autumn wind rattled the windows and swept leaves into spiraling dances. Inside, peace wrapped around them like a blanket, hard-won and precious. For the first time since that rainy night in the diner, when a stranger with grief in his eyes changed her world, Mara felt completely, utterly safe. Not because Casimir could destroy anything that threatened them, though he could and would, but because they had built this sanctuary together, brick by brick, truth by truth, choice by choice. Their little family settled into the quiet evening, whole and healing and home.